Kasparas Jakucionis and Riley declared for the NBA draft on Monday morning, and I'm going to talk about why that's actually a good thing for Illinois.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome one, welcome all to a Monday night live edition of Locked On Illini. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. My name is Verma. Thank you all so much for making us your first listen each and every day. We've just hit 2,900 subscribers on YouTube. I just know I have a tremendous amount of gratitude for all of you. My goal is to hit 3,000 by the time this show turns 1 year old on May 16th, and I hope we're well on your way. Thanks to all of you guys. If you haven't already, make sure you hit the like button on this one. It's going to be a little bit more of a relaxed episode. There's a lot of people that have been messaging me once Riley and Kousperis both officially declared for the NBA draft. And I figured, in the third segment here, I'd address some of your comments. I know you guys are going to have some questions, and we can just kind of relax a little bit on a Monday evening and just, talk about what it means to be an Illini. And I guess that's what I want to kick this all off with. Look, obviously next year's team, we'd been wondering what would happen with Kousperis and Riley. Okay, maybe not Kousperis so much. We're pretty familiar, and we're pretty sure that Kousperis would have gone to the NBA. And Riley, on the other hand, was kind of a 80-20 thing. And don't get me wrong, Will can still come back. Will's just simply going to the NBA draft, and we'll see how he tests out. And then ultimately, if things don't work out in his favor, he may still come back to the Illini next season. Not that it's necessarily something I'm counting on. People have asked me all the time, how confident am I that Will's going to be on Illinois' teams next year? 15-20% max. And I don't even know if we want that. That would be if he kind of fails the trials, the NBA draft camp that all these kids are going to go to. I think he has until May 28th to announce that he's coming back to college. I might be off by a couple of days on that date. Maybe someone in the chat can correct me. But, this is all about big picture. There's a reason. Look, Illinois, it's been a very long time since Illinois has had one and dones. And by very long time, I mean never. In the history of Illinois basketball, have we been able to produce one and done talent. And if you're an Illinois fan, which if you're watching this, I'm assuming you are, we love to talk about the storied history of our basketball program. We love to talk about how in the grand history of college basketball, I think Illinois is 15th or something like that all time in wins. And that sure, we don't have the hardware when it comes to the national championship to legitimize us. But overall wise, we're still in the upper echelon or maybe in tier 2 when it comes just to college basketball in general. But we just got off of a decade where Illinois basketball was in trouble. And, we had the national championship appearance, of course. But then for a decade after that, the program was kind of on a slow downhill turn, under Bruce Weber, under John Gross. And then we had Brad Underwood, take over. And, he has, for the most part, turned things around. But, my everydayers who watched the episode on Sunday talked about I talked about how during the Nike Hoop Summit, Illinois was the focal point for almost 3 to 5 minutes of that first half when they were focused on Kasparas Jakucionis sitting in the stands while it was David Mirkovic shooting free throws. And they just kind of talked about Illinois being a destination for international prospects. We know now Illinois, while they work the transfer portal, and I understand a lot of you are kind of panicking a little bit because we haven't gotten the alpha star, and the one that we're probably all silently hoping for, Riley, declared for the NBA draft on Monday morning. But Illinois is absolutely still in the runnings with a lot of the top names that are out there. Sure, some of these players Illinois has been kind of priced out on, but look, it's Monday night, and as of now, Ian Jackson has not committed to St. John's. I fully expected my Monday night, Tuesday morning episode to be talking about Ian Jackson going to St. John's. He went to USC, I believe, on Saturday, St. John's Sunday and Monday, and I was fully expecting him to have committed on his way out. That hasn't happened. And if that hasn't happened, all of a sudden, you have to give Orlando a chance. And that's really all I kind of asked for. And it's not just Ian Jackson. Again, I've talked about this. It's not Will Riley still has a chance of coming back, but it's the whole big picture where I'm talking about the health of this program. Illinois, not only for international players, but for these stars. Again, I'm using Ian Jackson here as a placeholder, but this could be said for any top 20 high school player, of which Will Riley was. Keep in mind, Will Riley, I think, was, he would have been 9th in the 2025 class, but he reclassified, and I think he fell to like 14th or 15th. Illinois, in their history, while we've had a pretty solid history, we haven't been known as a program for the elite talents. Sure, we had the D Brown. Sure, we had, Darren Williams, but I'm talking about top 10 type of players. Yeah, D was, but how long ago was that? Will Riley coming here? Kousperis was mocked in the 20s for the NBA draft coming into the season. Kasparas Jakucionis is going to be a lottery pick. If not a top 10, who knows? Depending on how he does, a top 5 pick in the upcoming NBA draft. And I will say, side note, I'm so grateful in some sort of way that Kousperis is going to go on to the NBA because, again, I haven't checked the comment section here. I'm sure some of you are already saying it, how you're going to tell me that you know better than these NBA experts and say Kousperis isn't ready for the NBA. Kousperis still needs to work on his game. No, guys. And I'm going to talk about this in the second segment a little bit. I don't think Illinois fans realize how grateful we should be for having KJ in Champaign for that 1 year. And trust me, I'm going to go with the Jonathan Giavoni, the ESPN draft expert. And all these mock drafts, for the most part, have KJ in the top 5, top 10. He's ready. He's a fantastic basketball player. He's not flawless, but he's a fantastic basketball player. The development of KJ, the development of Will Riley. Again, Will, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in the second segment, developed and by the end of the year became the 6th man of the year in the conference. If that progression did not happen, he wouldn't be going to the NBA draft. It's because he continued to get better and his name started going higher up on those NBA mock drafts. That's a sell for Brad Underwood. Brad can talk to Ian Jackson. Brad can talk to Devin Cleveland, all these top prospects, and be like, hey, look, no longer does Illinois need to be a second or third tier option for the top prospects in the country. Illinois is making a name for itself. Now, sure, look, let's be honest. Even the biggest Illinois supporters, even the biggest Brad Underwood supporters probably wish we had more hardware to show for it. We need more than one second weekend showing. Of course, I agree with you. But that's going to happen when you bring in more talent into that locker room. And I do think I'm a little bit more optimistic on what the locker room talent's going to look like next year. I know a lot of you, because you're messaging me about it, which, by the way, I love. Find me on your favorite social medias, Locked On Illini or The Sunny B. I have maybe 6 or 7 daily conversations with everyone, and I really do enjoy this part of the community building that we're doing. But I'm not worried yet that we haven't gotten the alpha. The reason being is that we've proven that Illinois can be a destination for those alphas. If you're a really talented young player, Illinois is a place where you can come in, you can succeed on the basketball court. We're one of 5 teams that's won 20 straight games for 4, 5, 6, 5 years or something like that. But you'll be going to the postseason. And there's just not, when you combine those two with the fact that, hey, and by the way, if you have NBA aspirations, we have the coaching staff to take you there. These are all major assets of the program. And again, we don't have the ultimate results when it comes to the season. And I grant you that. And, I know that The Brad Underwood haters will always be in the comment section until that changes. But I don't know if there's any time in the Illini's history that I would trade places with right now. And I'm talking about, look, maybe I'm a little too young for the Lou Henson era, but I'm looking at just success overall and where Illinois is in the grand scheme of things. For a program that hasn't won the national championship, we're talked about a lot. Again, I'll say it, I repeat myself on this weekly. Your favorite content creators who are focused on maybe the Big Ten in general or the national college basketball landscape. There's 300 college basketball teams? And yet Illinois seems to be mentioned as the topic of a video at least once a week, even on the national shows. Why is that? It's because the brand is growing. It's because the brand matters. And the more that we keep throwing these guys into the NBA and developing our players, look, this is going to be 3 in 2 years. Terrence Shannon last year, Will Riley, and Kousperis this year. That's what's going to make the guys like Dame Sarr, who could come to Champaign, develop, and be the 4th guy in 3 years next year. Who knows? Tomislav could be a late first rounder next year. All these guys who have NBA aspirations can now look at Illinois and be like, hey, that's a place to go. And again, I don't know when we've ever had a chance in history to say that. If you're a young prospect, you can come to Illinois and you can win basketball games, but now you can win basketball games and go to the next level. I say this on the show all the time, but I truly do mean it. It's a great time to be on the line. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena. And with Game Time, you can be a part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when the demand is high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. All-in pricing means no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you get. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Here for the second segment, by the way, if you haven't already, make sure you've subscribed or at least liked this video. We've got 11 likes and we have 42 people in here. So, the math is not quite mathing right now. By the way, this channel has grown by 600 people on YouTube in just 22 days. I thought things would slow down once the season ended, but that's absolutely not the case. I know Illinois fans are very hungry for transfer portal news. And I know the season ended somewhat disappointingly, and we're about to talk about that. But you guys are very hungry to find out what's going to happen for next season, what this roster is going to look like. And I'm telling you, this is the right place. We're going to be providing you daily updates, as I always do, each and every day, even on the weekends. We're here at Locked On Illini. But if you need information even sooner than that, the link to the Discord is in the description as well, where I have a bulletin board where I basically, as I get tips, I relay it over on the bulletin board. So definitely check that out if that's of any interest to you. The second topic I kind of wanted to leave an open floor with. I want to get you guys involved. And I wanted to ask, a couple years from now, what do you think you're going to look back and think of when you think of Kasparas Jakucionis and when you think of Will Riley? What kind of legacy do you think that they will have left? Because let's be honest, Illinois had 2, looks like, one-and-done players. 2 guys who are going to go in the first round in the NBA draft. 1 in the lottery, potentially 1 in the lottery, and 1 in the top 20 picks in the NBA draft. And Illinois has no banners to show for it. They have no hardware to show for it. Is it an overall disappointing season? Let's talk about Kousperis, because I feel like, Kousperis is a more definite, we've seen the last of him in an Illinois jersey. And I got to reflecting about this, not just, with myself, but talking to other Illini folks, let's just put it that way. And we talked about how we really think it's genuinely a bummer that Kasparas had the injury that he did when he did. Because Illinois fans have a very short memory on just how incredible he was those first 2 months. Almost 2.5 months, where he not only carried this Illinois team, but all that talk about this extremely high ceiling that this team has, it was because of Kousperis. We're waiting for someone else to step up to be the Robin to his Batman. And then he got hurt. And quite honestly, if you take a look at these YouTube videos, I think it was Kevin from the Orange and Blue podcast. He tweeted something out saying, hey, if you look at these highlights, he's constantly using his left hand. And he was kind of cheated out of that at the end, because you can tell he didn't use it as much in the latter parts of the season. And the turnovers kept happening. And you can tell like his confidence was shaken. This was a kid who showed the utmost like killer attitude for those first 2 months of the season. If the game was close, give Kousperis the ball and let him do magic. And if you do that, for the most part, magic happened. But then at the end of the year, the turnovers started piling up, and all of a sudden the turnovers were more than the assists. And, fans kind of got frustrated. And I understand on one hand, but for me, again, not that I'm fanning correctly or not, I'm just giving my perspective, is I think people forget he was 18 years old. I think people forget that, we're comparing a lot of people unwittingly. We've never had a talent like this at Illinois. Never. Not at 18 years old. We've had Terrence Shannon Jr. here at his, age 22 year. Marcus Domask at his age 23 year. And because Terrence and Marcus were as good as they were, all Big Ten level, I think we expected that out of Kousperis. And it kind of cheats Kousperis, because Kousperis it's not his fault that he's going to be our first one and done. I think Illinois fans kind of had a rushed expectation of him because we knew we were only going to see him for 1 year. I think they wanted to see the all-around package. Look, Kousperis is a very good basketball player, and I think he's going to have a pretty decent career in the NBA level. He's not Cooper Flagg. He's not AJ Debensa. Those are generational type of players. And I just think that there were some unfair expectations that were put on Kousperis, and he won't admit it, and maybe we'll never find out. But I do think that there's a reason that he never looked the same after the injury that he had during the season. You can tell on his face he cared. I mean, he doesn't need to be in Portland over the weekend for this Nike Hoop Summit. He knows his Illini career is over, but he's still there. He's still repping Illinois. And he's having these conversations with his agent, who's having these conversations with Dame Sar. If Kasparas had bad things to say about Illinois, Dame would not be coming here. Right now, I still do think that Dame is going to eventually end up in an Illini uniform. But that's only because Kasparas, despite what the fans may think of him, he loved his experience here. So much so he went and helped Brad Underwood talk to Dame and maybe give him, a little influence on how good things can be in Champaign. But, I'm going to be curious on your guys' thoughts, because I think KJ's getting I'm getting worse feedback from KJ, but I think it's just also timing, right? Let's talk about the next guy, Will Riley. Now, what kind of legacy he's going to leave at Illinois. I feel like his is going to be more positive than KJ's was, when I don't think there's any sort of question on who the better basketball player was. It was KJ. Sure, Will was the best player on the team probably the last month or so. But there was a 2-month stretch where Will Riley couldn't hit a bucket, where Will looked like his confidence was shaken. It looked like the college game was simply just too fast for him. Now, I'm not dogging on Will Riley. In fact, I love Will Riley's story, and my everydayers in here will know what I mean by that. Will was a top 10 prospect in the country. Comes to Illinois, has a great opening game against Eastern Illinois. The hype is real. The first month was pretty solid for Will. And we talked about, hey, you know what? Obviously, it's going to be, let's enjoy the Will Riley experience while we have it, because he's obviously not going to stick around. And then he struggled for those 2 months. And at the risk of me sounding old, you couldn't blame me if I almost suspected that when you have a high prospect like that, a top prospect, if they start struggling or not starting, that's one of the main things, right? The fact that Will Riley was sitting behind Ben Hummerkaus for a majority of the season, I still think is one of the biggest mistakes Brad made all season long. But he wasn't starting, and he was struggling, and he was sitting on the bench. I would not have blamed, maybe not blame's not the word. I would not have been surprised if Will would have mentally checked out at that point. Just got himself ready for the NBA draft. Hey, college, it didn't work out for me. It's not a big deal. I'm going to play at the next level anyway. But he didn't do that. In fact, the quite opposite. He continued to work on his game. And those of you who were with me in January, even before his shots started falling, I talked about, hey, look, I'm on the rewatches. My eyes are on Will Riley, and his overall game is getting better. I think the shot's going to fall eventually, but he's looking more and more confident. He's making the right switches on defense. And more importantly, the playmaking was starting to show itself. I did not think he was going to be any sort of the playmaker that he was by the end of the year. I knew he was going to be a great scorer. And ironically enough, like, his shooting percentages were a lot lower than I thought they'd end up being his freshman year. But by the end of the year, when Kousperis was so clearly struggling, Will was our best player. And he's not going to go as high as Kousperis in this upcoming NBA draft. But I wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden Will had the better NBA career. I just think between his size and his skill set, like, it's what the NBA is kind of craving. I have more questions on Kousperis than I do Will. I don't know how Kousperis' skill set's going to necessarily translate to the NBA as much as I know Will's will. The questions I have about Will are, well, is he going to get the opportunity? He's still really skinny. He still needs to gain some weight. And that's why I was hoping maybe another summer with Fletch would turn things around for him. But who knows? We'll see. Again, as I said, the first segment, overall, it's a good thing if he decides to stay in the NBA draft. I'm just going to be curious, and I want to get your guys' thoughts. 3, 5, 10 years from now, when we look back on the 2024-2025 season and we hear the names Kasparas Jakucionis and Will Riley, what do you think are going to be the first thoughts that we're going to have? Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. And you can stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Me personally, I'm spending way too much money going out to eat. I got 2 kids. I'm tired. It's easy to go get food from the fast food restaurant. I know I got to keep that in check. And with Monarch Money, instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. A special shout out to the audio podcast listeners. We had our best day ever on Friday when it comes to downloads. Again, you guys are a big reason that this is one of the fastest growing channels on the entire Locked On podcast network. And your continued support shows that Locked On made the right choice in starting an Illinois channel. I figured now we'd spend a couple minutes just getting to some of your thoughts. So Mike asks, are we getting that Italy kid? I'm assuming you're talking about Dame Sarr. And Mike, this is the most often question asked to me. I'm going to say the same thing that I've been saying for a couple days now. Am I as confident as I was a month ago? No. Am I still confident? Yeah. I think the NBA is still out there, and we'll see how he ends up testing out. But I feel very confident saying that if Dame is going to be playing college basketball next year, it'll be in an Illini uniform. You might hear other Blue Bloods names mentioned, but that's just Dame's agent doing his job very well. Like his price might be going up by the day, but I think he had a good enough showing at that Nike Hoop Summit that he's going to get the attention of a lot of programs. But I do think that, as I mentioned earlier, the relationship between KJ, the agency, Brad Underwood, or Jeff Alexander, I think just overall looks very favorable for the Illini. Mike says we need to get some more players or we're in trouble. And I kind of talked about that a little bit. I don't think we're in as much trouble as a lot of people kind of think. I think we've got the floor right now. If we had our current roster and we replaced or we put in an average shooting guard, an average small forward, league average, I think this team already, as it is, will win 16 to 18 games, right? Now, again, for an Illini fan, you might start panicking. But I beg you to look at it from a different perspective. That's if we don't get any more upgrades. I just think people are really underrating how good Tomislav, Kylan Boswell, and those two guys being the foundation of next year's team is going to be. Tomislav, I truly do believe, is going to be an all Big Ten center next year. He was our MVP, in my opinion, all year last year. And keep in mind, he was battling mono and he was battling injuries. I think another year with Fletch where he can really work on getting his foundation stronger, work on his post-up games with Orlando Antigua, and hopefully, who knows, get a little bump playing with his brother can really elevate him to an all Big Ten player. And I do feel confident that, whether it is Sar or someone else, Illinois is going to be able to find at least one more guy who we all consider could be potentially the best player on next year's team. And if Tomislav Ivisic, a guy who I think can be an all Big Ten player, is your second best player on next year's team, I think Illinois is going to be in pretty good shape. Just patience. That's all I'm saying. It's April 14th as of this recording. We have a lot of time to find out who that next guy is going to be. Let's see. Jordan asked, I hope they're not getting Adam Miller. Jordan, I think it's going to happen. In my Discord, I think I put the percentage at 60%. But now someone made me aware that NC State is not in the running. And I'm always afraid of Will Wade. And I did think that there was a chance that Adam could follow Will one more time. But apparently NC State, if they're not in the running, then I feel even more confident. I'll probably bump that percentage up on the bulletin board in the Discord to 75% at some point tomorrow. Boxer River says, I'm okay with Miller as a pickup if he's a role bench guy for not a lot of NIL. I completely agree. I think that's kind of where I'm at too. I think Adam's mature enough now. I think he's like 23 years old. That he understands like this could be his last year or this will be his last year playing college basketball. And, it's a good way to just put the bow tie on his career and, hopefully go out. Look, he won in his freshman year at Illinois. And why not win once again in his last year of college basketball? Because he didn't win anywhere in between. Philip says Dame Sar time. I hope so. Again, I don't have a timetable, but I mean, truthfully, I wouldn't be surprised if we heard something about Dame in the next week. I also wouldn't be surprised if we had to wait until this NBA draft. But again, what I know is going to happen is there's going to be a lot of panic every time a new blue blood gets mentioned with Dame, because it can absolutely happen. Mike says 2013 to 2018 were very bad years. Absolutely. He also says, I give him a chance, but if there are no new commitments by May 8th, I'm not sure what is going on. That's a fair window. Fair enough, Mike, but keep in mind, last year, Tomislav signed May 6th. Kousperis signed, I believe, May 21st. And Will Riley signed on June 23rd. Our three best players signed after, well, I guess a couple days before for Tomislav, but our two best players signed after May 8th that you mentioned in that comment. So again, I know maybe I seem unreasonable about how non-panicky I am, but truly, I'm not panicking. I would be panicking much more now if we had 8 more spots to fill on this basketball roster. We don't. Most of this roster is done. Thelonious Monk says, this is the long term, the best possible thing. This is the real foundation of talent we have needed to make. Absolutely. Look, there's a lot of people talking about Michigan and talking about all these NIL funds that everybody else has. I'm going to dedicate an episode in the offseason about this, but don't get too disgruntled about this NIL. You know what? Illinois had the second highest NIL in the conference last year. We finished 7th. You know who had the highest NIL? Indiana. Where'd they finish? They finished below us. Kansas State spent more money than anybody last year. They didn't make the NCAA tournament. There's something that comes with comfort and retention. And Illinois right now is bringing a lot of the guys that they've had in the past back. Michigan, I know that seems to be the popular trendy choice that all the teams, all the fans are in the Big Ten Conference are talking about. Let's see Dusty May put it together first. Right now, sure, they've spent a lot of money and they've got some pretty big names, but I don't necessarily like their roster over ours. And that's just, I promise you, I'm not being biased when I say that. There's no shooting on that roster. I don't think they have upgraded at all when it comes to their point guard. I don't know what they plan to do with Mara and Morez in the middle, because someone's going to not be very happy. So we've got a long offseason ahead, and I do think that people are undervaluing where Illinois stands currently. Mike also says we need a new person calling the defense. I think everyone agrees with you on that one, Mike, except for maybe the guy who actually is the only one in the world who can make that decision. Douglas Anderson says, beats the heck out of the gross era. Good for these kids. Happy for them. Absolutely. Poloni says, in terms of legacy, Rutgers has done the same thing this year, but not better. And I just don't feel like it's going to be the same long-term effect. The Euro guys know they can develop here quickly. Rutgers is a fantastic comparison. Rutgers is about to have 2 top 5 players. And they didn't make the tournament. And they were one of the, if not the most disappointing team in the entire country. Great point, Polonius. Again, 2 top 5 picks, pretty much. And I feel like they just fade away into nothing again. Douglas also agrees, thinks he never got, KJ never got 100% after the injury. Johnny says, Will is 19. He would have been a high school senior graduating when he was 19. Johnny says, I know he did. I'll just go ahead and wrap it up there. We're already at 32 minutes. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Again, on your way out, 28 likes, 46 people watching. I would sincerely help or appreciate if you guys could help me out and show this to your favorite Illini fan. Again, Monday night, more casual episode. I've got another one for you tomorrow where we're going to be talking about the football commitments. I've already recorded the segment with Brian Smith, the fantastic recruiting expert here at Locked On at the Locked On Network. I think you're going to have a lot of fun with that episode. Also talk about the women's basketball team. Guys, they got 2 really good players over this weekend. And I've always talked about wanting to talk about them more on the show, and I finally got a chance to for tomorrow. So definitely do not miss tomorrow's episode. I appreciate all of you. That's it. I love you guys.